Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Joe on Joe Illustrated. That's right, guys. This is a very special episode of Joe on Joe because we are going to talk about comic books today. We're going to talk, I believe we're going to be doing the silent follow-up from the G.I. Joe yearbook number 3. But before we get into that, we are going to talk to friend, author, talented writer, and Army veteran Jason Inman about a new book that he has coming out this week. Jason, welcome back
Thanks.
to Joe on Joe.
I'm happy to be back with Joe on Joe, man.
Oh, man, I'm happy to have you.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love talking Joe on Joe.
Yeah.
Joe with Joe.
Joe with Joe
Joe with
on
Joe.
Joe.
You're Joe, and the
talking
Joe.
about Joes. Because
Okay.
your book, everyone, is called Super Soldiers.
It's about some Joes.
It's about some Joes. Super Soldiers. Drill that home, everyone. Super Soldiers by Jason Inman. Tell me a little bit about this book.
Okay, so this is a nonfiction book about comic book characters that have also served in the military. I'm an Army veteran. I'm also a big comic book geek. And there's a weird secret connection crossover between these two worlds. And the idea behind this book is to focus each chapter on one of these characters and decide by the end of the chapter, using my military experience, are they or are they not a good representation of a service member? And
Okay.
there's a lot of
So there's judging involved.
there is some judging. There's some critical analysis, and some of these characters I give the pass to. Some of these characters I don't.
Okay.
They don't all pass. And then I put a lot of my own military stories in here, like some of my personal. So it starts off as this nerdy exercise, and then it sort of becomes a weird autobiographical time about my time in the military.
That is so important because everyone can talk about something. It's how you filter it through your experience, and that's what you bring to the table. You've been a podcaster for quite a while. You've been a geek, a face of the geek culture for some time. Your podcast is called Geek History Lesson. If you haven't heard it, you guys seek it out. It is fantastic. It's on all your podcatchers. It's everywhere.
100%. Yeah.
100%. You guys, you and your lovely wife Ashley, you guys go really break down and go in depth on a specific comic book character for every episode.
Yes, and so we pick a specific comic book character, and in less than an hour, we tell you everything that we think you should know about that character. It is essentially exactly what its title is.
Yeah.
It's a geek history lesson.
It's exactly that. And so you're bringing that encyclopedic knowledge to the super soldiers of the world.
Yes, exactly.
And I love it because some listeners may not know. Stop. It's G.I. Joe. So, of course, my
Yes.
listeners are interested in military comics.
I hope so.
But what people may not know is that war comics, just to throw a term on the genre, were a massive part of the industry. They actually kept the comic book industry alive post-World War II during the Wortham years when superheroes were shuffled off to the side for fear of corrupting children and seduction of the innocent and so on. And war books, spearheaded by the likes of like Bob Kanigher, Joe Kubert.
Yes, Joe Kubert, a lot of Joe Kubert.
So much Joe Kubert and everything. He was so great.
Yeah, war comics lasted until they didn't really die out until the 1970s.
Yeah. I mean, there were just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of issues of and the. I think the reason why they were so good and so authentic is because all these guys served in World War II.
Yes, exactly. Like it was the post the Great War, these ideas, and the comics are so our Army at war, Men at war, Sergeant Rock, even Nick Fury and the Howling Commandos,
Our Fighting Forces, Enemy Ace,
the Blackhawks,
Yep.
Willie Schultz.
Willie Schultz. Who's Willie Schultz? I don't even know who Willie Schultz
Willie
is.
Schultz is a guy that I found out through research of this book. And this is a comic that has a hard time getting reprinted because it was done by a company that no longer exists and nobody knows where the rights are. Willie Schultz is a German-American who joins the American Army to go fight the Nazis in World War II. And then he gets stuck behind enemy lines. And so what he does is, because he's a German-American, he can speak German. He kills a Nazi, puts on the Nazi uniform, and then pretends to be a Nazi officer to survive.
up.
And then here's the thing. He's unable to escape the Nazi military. So World War II ends, and he's still a German. And then the book becomes the thing of like, no, I'm an American. No.
What?
Yeah, it's so insane.
Is the name of the book Willie Schultz?
It's Willie Schultz.
That's the name
Yeah,
of it?
yeah.
I've
Yeah.
never heard
Yeah.
of that book.
Yeah, I discovered it in the research of this book, and the reason I didn't include him as a main chapter is because I actually wanted to read his book.
Yeah.
I could not find it.
Yeah.
I looked and looked and looked, and there's a big war on the rights. Like nobody really knows who the rights. And then apparently, like his comic was canceled because at the time of war comics, some people thought Willie Schultz was offensive. You know, so
The subtitle is German Wang.
yeah, like Willie Schultz fake Nazi. So there are a lot of people like, you shouldn't be publishing this comic book. Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, go do some googling on Willie Schultz. It'll blow your mind.
Yeah, that's wow, that's wild. Because I love Haunted Tank.
Yo, God, Haunted
Haunted
Tank.
Tank is so cool.
Yeah.
I love The Unknown Soldier.
What about Weird War Tales?
Weird War Tales, very cool. It's, of course, it culminates in G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But I would say, strangely, and I've always said it on this podcast, G.I. Joe was less a war comic, more a superhero comic.
I agree with that.
Yeah, which makes it the perfect crossover for super soldiers. Because in this book, you're talking about characters. You do cover the Sergeant Rocks of the world.
Of course.
And I feel like that's got to be a no-brainer. I haven't even read the book yet. If you don't give Sergeant Rock a passing grade, we're done here.
He gets a passing grade. I will spoilers, he gets a passing grade. Yeah.
But you've got people, so let's go a little bit, we won't go exactly in order, but so let's start with War Machine. Everyone knows War Machine from the Iron Man movies and Avengers movies.
Yeah.
Played by
Don
Cheadle and Terrence Howard in the
Terrence
first
Howard.
Iron Man. So War Machine, tell me a little bit about him.
War Machine.
With leaving a little tease for them to pick up your book.
Sure. I call War Machine the ultimate battle buddy. Because he's the perfect story of the transition from military to civilian, because he met Tony Stark while he was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam.
Yes, he did.
And Tony Stark was wandering through the jungle with his Iron Man armor and a trench coat. For some reason, why he had a trench coat over the Iron Man armor, I don't know. And so they helped each other escape the jungle because Rhodey's helicopter was down, and Tony Stark offered him his first civilian job out of the military. So because of that, Rhodey has this unwavering loyalty to Tony Stark because he gave him a gig. And they kind of advertise in those Iron Man comic books that, you know, back then Vietnam vets were not treated the best after the war.
Yeah.
And Rhodey's kind of that same way, and Tony Stark gave him a chance. And it's interesting, a little bit of the tease of that chapter is that I go through all the instances that Tony Stark was an absolute dick to Rhodey, and Rhodey is still loyal to him, even to the point where Tony fakes his death and doesn't tell Rhodey.
He did.
And then when Rhodey finds out, he is so mad. He breaks apart the West Coast Avengers because he's so mad that Tony's alive.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe actually I just reread the first Rhodey, and I believe he had the trench coat on so that it was by Leighton and Michelini.
Yes. Yeah.
So that Tony would then have plausible deniability as to why Rhodey wouldn't know that he's Iron Man.
Okay.
I
forgot what it is.
I do think that was the reason. So it covered the Iron Man outfit.
Yeah, and then there's panels in that book where Rhodey is getting a piggyback ride from Iron Man. Like he's like hanging on and just like
my favorite little bit of Rhodey trivia that everyone always forgets, Rhodey was in Secret Wars, not Tony.
Yes. Now, and I mentioned this in the book. When I started reading Iron Man, Rhodey was Iron Man. And so when Tony became Iron Man, I was like, what's up with this?
Who's this guy?
Rhodey's Iron Man.
Yeah. And if I recall, it's referenced very obliquely in that book because they knew that book had legs to sell toys, and underneath the Iron Man armor could be anybody.
Yeah, I think there was like a weird editorial had the rule where he couldn't take off his armor.
Right.
Because of that.
Yeah.
Which
So
I can't imagine what that smelled like.
Totally. But he did have the roller skates at that point.
That's true.
It was
That's
amazing.
true.
He was
but also, this is
skating around the Beyonders headquarters.
This is pre-nanotechnology. You had to like take off each piece.
I gotta say, that's my favorite Iron Man. I don't like the Nano Iron Man because I think
really?
it's too easy.
I agree.
I love when Tony has to solve, or Rhodey or whoever's in the armor, they have to solve the problems, and I hate it when it's just the tech-based stuff because that's what separates him from everyone else.
I agree. My favorite Iron Man armor is the Heroes Return Kurt Busiek run.
Oh, yeah.
And that armor was designed by Alex Ross. Sean Chen was the artist.
Alex Ross designed that armor.
So Alex Ross designed that armor for a run with Kurt Busiek like years ago, like 3 or 4 years before that. Marvel said no to that. And then when... Yeah. Right?
Hold on.
Yeah. It was like right around the time of Marvel. It's like Marvel said no. Then Marvels did well. Anyway, so when Kurt Busiek got the book, he asked Alex Ross, he's like, "Can I use your armor design?" And Alex Ross was like, "Of course." And then Sean Ten drew it. But in that book, he has the armor in a suitcase.
Yeah,
that's like a version, his version of the suitcase armor.
Yeah, the suitcase armor is that's always going to be.
But I agree with you. It has become too easy.
Yes, completely. I hope whenever they reboot, because they'll put someone else in the movie.
Oh,
so
100%.
Spoilers for Endgame.
Yeah.
I hope that whatever the other armor is, it is more modular.
Yes,
like that,
I agree.
and less built into. I get it. At that point, we've already seen Robert Downey Jr. Figure out how to be Iron Man. So I would like to have someone else kind of go through. Like, I got to go underwater. I don't have an underwater suit. Let me make one. Or let me grab one.
I hope we get War Machine. I hope we get a War Machine
that'd be cool.
series because I think he totally deserves to have one.
Yes.
We've not seen a veteran superhero in the MCU yet. Captain Marvel, yes, but he's currently working for the government. Like, he's in the Air Force, so I'd like to see that. And also, I think you see Endgame, he starts out the movie with a thin suit, and then at the end, he gets the big blocky one. So I hope that's hinting at the modular armor.
One of my favorite things about the Rhodey's armor in those movies, they progressed. You could tell that the military wasn't keen on upgrading his armor.
Yeah.
It looked worse and worse every movie. It was more and more beat up because they didn't know how to repair it, and Tony wasn't going to help him.
Yeah,
he was like, take this suit and go for it.
You got to pay me $2 billion, and then I'll repair it.
It was so subtle, but it was great. All right, so this is a fan favorite of mine. Let's jump over to DC. I love Nathaniel Adam, Captain Adam, ATOM.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of his stuff. Tell me about Captain Adam.
So I was not a fan of Captain Adam until this book. So Captain Adam, you got to realize, for me,
you're that guy at the desk. Changed my mind.
Yeah, he was the guy that showed up in Superman stories in early 2000s, late 90s stories that basically, when the government was like, we don't like what Superman's doing, Captain Adam would show up and be like, hey, I can go nuclear. You want this? And Superman would be like, no, we don't want. Stop. Nobody likes radiation. And that's.
There's a whole miniseries on HBO about how no one likes radiation.
Nobody likes radiation.
Now. Yeah.
Chill out, Captain Adam. That's your only power. When doing the research for this book, I didn't know his story about him being a time-lost soldier, that when he goes through the experiment, he gets jumped to the future. And I really talk about this a lot. Something that a lot of people don't realize is that when you're deployed and when you're sent overseas, it really feels like your life goes on pause and everybody else's life gets to continue.
Sure.
And so through that, and I tell a story about a specific moment of when that happened to me. Just to give you an idea, I was very worried about coming back to being in America because I was like, oh, what am I going to do? Because I was actually in the middle of college.
Yeah, so you served 6 years in the Army.
Yeah.
From 2000 to 2006. You were enlisted before 9/11.
I enlisted in a peacetime army.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That must have been a...
And I was in basic training when 9/11 happened.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I got to see, and I that's a story that's in the book too.
Okay.
Is I talk about where the drill sergeants wheeled the television out for us and showed us the flaming towers, and they said, "We're going to war, boys. Get ready."
Wow, that's how you found out.
That's how we found out. Yeah.
Wow.
And it's funny. Fun fact: I didn't actually see any other footage of 9/11 until I came back from basic training, which was like 5 or 6 weeks later.
Sure.
I had no idea what was going on or what had happened, because you're cut off from the news. So the whole time displaced thing, I think, is something that every service member can relate to. And so rereading Captain Adams or 80s series really drove that home to me and actually made me really like the character. And I kind of wish that was brought up more, because I think it makes him more sympathetic than government dick who's like, I'm going to blow. I
agree. I totally agree. Yeah, that was my first exposure to him was via Justice League Europe.
Yeah.
And I thought they handled him wonderfully.
Yeah.
I really liked it with that beautiful Bart Sears artwork. And the way he made his chrome look, just fantastic. And so then I sought out his first DC series, and then I got some of the old Charlton stuff. And I think Charlton, it was more about, although he was military, but he wasn't time displaced in the Charlton, was he?
Yeah, no, as far as I can tell.
It was more just about 50s sci-fi, the reaction to nuclear weaponry,
exactly,
to nuclear power. And then when DC rebooted or I guess. So here's it.
That-
Would it
that-
be
I-
considered a reboot if DC buys it and starts from scratch? That's not really a reboot, then, is it? Like they didn't reboot.
Sort of.
Did they reboot Ted Cord, or did they just launch Ted Cord?
They kind of launched Ted Cord. They didn't reboot Ted
Right,
Cord, but I would
yeah.
consider the Captain Atom a reboot because the whole reason they did the time displacement was to move him to modern day.
Yeah, I
They
guess
wanted
you're
to
right.
get him
yeah,
out of the
you're right.
60s.
Yeah, you're right. Right,
You know?
right. Yeah. So he's a good representation. I'm gonna wager. Well, I'm gonna throw out here.
Okay.
I'm gonna guess Nuke would be a not very positive representation.
You would be correct on
Yeah,
that. I
Nuke-
hated writing that chapter.
Yeah, listeners, Nuke is from Marvel Comics. He was primarily, everyone knows him as the really out of nowhere villain at the end of Born Again.
Yeah.
Which is one of my favorite story arcs of all time, and
Mm-hmm.
yet with the worst fifth chapter of any. I hate
doesn't make
when
sense.
it makes no sense when
Yep.
Nuke shows up.
There's this guy with a American flag tattooed on his face who will only drink American beer.
Yeah.
Comes to beat up Daredevil.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, and that's the power of that story
Mm-hmm.
is that Miller can completely miss the landing entirely, and
Yeah.
still Born Again is an amazing story.
Well, yeah.
Tell me your take on Nuke.
Well, that's. I think you nailed it. Miller completely missed the point. Like Miller obviously was just like, these are my feelings in the United States military. This is how people feel about veterans now because we're very close to Vietnam, and here it is. He's evil and he has no regard for civilians, and he's just a drug-addled, order-following psychopath. That's who he is, and it's weird because I actually think that Nuke is kind of responsible for how certain people's perception of soldiers are still in comics right now.
Yeah.
Like I think people still I think people see the Punisher and Nuke as the same person.
Oh,
I
that'd
really do.
That'd be a big mistake. Yeah, that'd be a big mistake.
And I think that perception of who Nuke is actually in the common day, every day, even outside of comics. I think it exists.
Yeah. Well, I think most people actually. I would probably wager more people are familiar with Nuke actually from Jessica Jones.
You're true. Yeah,
'cause
and they
if
don't.
you looked
go,
at like viewership numbers, it's got to be more people who've seen that than have read Born
100%.
Again.
No, but I
Yeah.
meant more like you would be surprised that there are still people like in our modern day society that still think that soldiers are just like baby killers. you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, we don't subscribe to that. I hope that goes without saying. So when you brought up Punisher, and we're gonna leave that to the listeners. You guys can pick up Super Soldiers, and it's on.
Yeah.
It launches on June 18th.
June 18th is available in bookstores.
Bookstores
but you
and
can
Amazon,
you can pre-order it on Amazon.
Love it.
Barnes and Noble,
guys.
IndieBound, Apple
Absolutely.
Books, and there's an audiobook, but I don't read the audiobook.
Oh my gosh! So I'm putting this
It's
up.
on Audible.
Oh,
There you go.
amazing!
Yep.
Oh, who did
Yeah.
who did the audio? For?
I had some guy that does a lot of them. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I'm a little saucy because I didn't get to do it. So
Yeah, you're a broadcaster.
it was just scheduling is why I couldn't do it.
So go to Amazon. This
He's quite
drops.
lovely. He's
if
fine.
if you're plugged into the Joe on Joe show, this will be dropping on the 13th. So you guys got 5 days to go to Amazon and pre-order, because pre-order is huge, because when it launches, it'll launch at a certain ranking on the charts, and that
Yes.
always is really important for the book sales.
Yeah,
initial book
it's a
sales.
secret thing. Like pre-orders
Yeah.
are counted as your first day sales.
Yep.
And first day sales and getting that Amazon bestseller like little badge is the way how smaller books and smaller publishers can beat the big guys. We can
Yes.
topple the titans.
So go out there and pre-order Super Soldiers by Jason Inman. So when I think of Punisher, I think of Garth Ennis, and when I think of Garth Ennis, I think of military comic books.
Mm-hmm.
And he has written some of the most beautiful modern military stories. He's keeping that genre alive.
I agree.
In a big, big way.
I agree.
Are you familiar with his war story stuff? And
Yes, I love Punisher Born.
yes,
I think it's amazing. I talk about it in the book as well.
Okay.
I love it. There was another one that he did that's not related to the Punisher. Oh God, the life forgets. It just completely escapes me. But
he did Adventures in the Rifle Brigade.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was a 3. Did he? I think he might have done 2 of those, but one of them was like a 3-issue. It was an odd miniseries.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And then his war story stuff, which has had they've collected them under the War Stories banner, but like one's like J for Jenny, the Witches.
Yes.
They're all these. They're these really short miniseries stories. They would be collected in an anthology book. They're unrelated.
and they're only being published because Garth Ennis is writing them.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's he just with his Frank Castle stuff. He shows how the Punisher was born in war. Not it wasn't. He was. metamorphosized in Central Park. Mm-hmm. You know, his zit was popped in Central Park.
Exactly.
But that zit got built.
And there's
in war, and it just so smart and empathetic and sympathetic. I always get those confused.
And then there's a weird. He has a sequel to Bourne. It's called either The Unit or The Platoon.
Okay.
And it's about the guys that he served with.
Yes.
Have you read that one?
Yeah, where they're in the
Platoon
bar.
Or the Unit? Yes, they're in the bar.
Yes. And it's great. And they're all telling stories to a reporter.
About Frank Castle.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
Speaking of war comics, Robert Venditti just dropped as D-Day, the Seventh Day, or something like that.
Okay.
He just dropped through DC and Vertigo, and it's really. I just read it. It's really good.
Well, he wrote a bunch of the Green Lantern Corps, which is when he was writing it was essentially a wartime book. Mm-hmm. Although that was about a unit of Green Lanterns, in which John Stewart is the leader.
And he was the guy that put John Stewart in charge, which I say is makes 100% sense. It makes sense.
Oh, total.
Yeah.
Now, is Robert a vet? Did he?
No, his grandfather was.
Okay.
So that's how his connection. And the reason why he did this D-Day story, and again, I'm forgetting the title because it's a long, complicated title, but his grandfather apparently was in that battle.
Wow.
And he's writing the story of that battle. It's quite good. It literally came out, I believe, 3 weeks ago.
Okay, so that's something else, guys.
Yeah.
Seek that out too.
Yeah.
Because he's a very talented writer.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, I've never had a chance to meet him, but
he's
I've
a lovely gent.
Enjoyed all of his work, like in a really real way. Now, these days, you are fresh off working on a little CBS TV series called The Code.
Yes, a military show.
Military
show. There's a theme
Is
here.
there a theme?
Yeah, there's a theme.
What? And how did you enjoy that? You were working as showrunner's assistant on that.
I loved it, man. It's showrunner's assistant is basically showrunner junior.
Yeah.
You follow the showrunner around. You get to be on every call that he's in and every meeting, and you get to basically pick his brain about how the show works. Mm-hmm. And you just make sure that he goes to where he goes and he gets the scripts he needs to get. And but you're there at every beat, from the writing process in the writer's room to the editing process to the sound mix. It's fascinating. I loved it. It was amazing to see like a TV show come from nothing to completed in 12 episodes.
It's got to be like a master's class.
Yeah.
You must be a sponge. Yeah,
it was going to college for television and getting to see like every draft of every script and seeing like the changes and why are we changing and what was shot today, what wasn't shot today. It was fascinating. It was like one of the best jobs, and not the best job I've had in my entire life.
Is there any like one experience that was just like crazy or mind blowing or funny or something that you can share?
I don't know if really mind blowing, but a really awesome experience, especially for me, is that I was one of 3 vets on the entire staff. We had 2 writers that were vets, and then I was a vet. And since I'm in the writer's office, so I would get a lot of like knocks on the door, like from various writers being like, "So what do you think about this?" Because our show was about Marines.
Okay.
And the other 2 guys were Marines, and I was Army. But at least I could.
Did they treat you poorly?
No. No, they were great. But like from other writers who were not in the military, they would come ask me questions. And there was an episode. It was episode 8, and this is probably my proudest moment on the whole show. In the writer of that episode, Hope Mastras, came. She's awesome. She's an amazing writer. She's a lawyer, and she was building this case in Afghanistan, this murder case. She came to me and she was like, I need somewhere to hide the murder weapon. There's a knife. I need somewhere to hide it. And I'd like it to be like something unique that a military person would know, but like maybe a civilian wouldn't know. And I said, hide it inside the M16. And she was like, what? And I was like, oh, yeah. You know, like there's the buttstock on every M16. Mm-hmm. That's hollow. And there's a compartment that you can open up on it. And I was like, we used to put like candy bars and power bars and protein bars in there because, you know, you're supposed to put your like cleaning kit in there.
Yeah.
We never did that. And so I was like, yeah, have the guy put it in there. And then he's standing in formation and the dog comes by and is like, woof, 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 you know, like, and they're like, why is the dog barking at your weapon? And then they open it up and there's the murder weapon. And it made it into the episode.
Wow.
So I was like, hey, I designed a murder weapon.
That's wild. That's wild. That's smart.
So, yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that gets you street cred.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
because the guys that are watching that, I'm assuming there's probably a large contingent of military.
I would hope so.
Watching it,
Yeah.
And they go, that they know that's really cool.
Yeah. So that was like probably the coolest moment that I got to contribute that little small piece. You know?
That's fantastic. So what was the biggest? Going back to Super Soldiers, ordered on Amazon.
Pre-order now.
Was there a surprise character besides? I mean, German Willie Schultz.
Willie Schultz.
That's probably
Willie.
German Willie.
I believe the title is actually Private Willie Schultz.
Yeah, of the guys. So of the guys that you knew,
Okay.
Was there anything about it that was that in your research? Like, because I know you knew a lot of this and you started going into it. Was there anything you've discovered about any of these heroes?
Oh, interesting. One fun fact I realized. So we all know the cover to Captain America comics, #1.
Yes.
It's him socking Adolf Hitler
Right
in the jaw, and Bucky's like, "Go get him!" You know.
Get him! I'm cheering with my left arm, which I will soon lose.
Yeah.
But I'll be back.
That's right.
Don't you worry.
That cover was controversial at the time.
Was it?
Yeah. The American public was very divided on that cover because that cover came out in March of 1941 before Pearl Harbor.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
And Joe Simon and Jack Kirby were very politically motivated, and they knew that Timely wouldn't let them do political stuff in the comic. Because Captain America Comics #1 is about he's fighting mobsters and a spy.
Mm-hmm.
And then Red Skull's in it, but he's a spy. And Cap never leaves American soil.
Yeah.
Which I think a lot of people like imagine that idea like Cap gets a super, just like the movie, he gets a super soldier serum and he runs off to fight in D-Day. Nope, not what happened at all. So Pearl Harbor hadn't happened yet, and there were still a lot of Americans that were like, "Oh, this Adolf Hitler guy, we don't know. Maybe he's not so bad.
Let's hear him out. The trains are running on time."
Yeah, exactly. It's like maybe he's, these British people complain about everything.
Yeah.
And so they decided that they were like, okay, we're going to do this comic. We can't do the inside politically. Every cover is going to like be a poster or like a thing to our support and our political beliefs. And like, yeah, their first 5 or 6 covers, like people did not like. Like there were complaints. Like shop owners sent complaints to Timely about like, what's the deal with this Captain America punching Adolf?
Oh,
can you imagine that?
wow! Yeah,
right?
no.
And again, like 9 months later, completely different. Everybody's like, hell yeah, Captain America, you punch Adolf.
Oh my gosh! Wow, that's wild.
It's crazy.
I didn't have
I had
that context.
no idea about that either.
There are so many great covers. So we were talking about there, where the interiors are one thing and the covers were used as posters.
Yeah,
there have been books published about like the wartime heroes.
Superman was the same thing.
Superman was the same thing, and those covers of like World's Finest.
Yeah,
it's like Superman on top of a destroyer, and it's by war bonds and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's all these posterized covers, which is funny because when I was coming up, I loved when my comic book cover kind of dealt with what was on the interior.
Me too.
And
I love dialogue covers, by the way.
Yes, I love dialogue covers. And in the last, I don't know, however long, 10, 15 years, whatever, we've kind of gone to the more of iconic posterized,
yeah.
Which is funny because that's what they were doing back in the day.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
as much as we want to be like, well, in my day, our comic covers told the story. Yeah, no, but back in
balloons.
the day, they were posters.
Yeah, they were just like giant war bond
there were
posters.
stories, but they were posters. Yeah.
I love the one where it's Superman walking, he like has his arms around the sailor and the soldier. I love that one a lot. That's really good.
Really, really good. All right, and lest you guys think that he just covers, I don't know, 15 main dudes in his chapters, he's also got honorable mentions. You talk a little bit about Wonder Woman, John Diggle from TV's Arrow,
possibly the most important modern veteran character.
Really?
Yeah.
How come?
Well, because he was in the Army Special Forces, and he was a character specifically created by Arrow. And because his popularity was so big, DC Comics added him to the comics. So now Green Arrow in the comic books has a veteran sort of partner, which I think is pretty important. Like he's one of the more modern, more important ones.
Of course, named after Andy Diggle, who wrote
Green Arrow
Year One, which was the precursor to the TV show. It's all
exactly.
Just this circular, like Ouroboros, just snake eating its own tail on that. Moon Knight, Spawn, The Losers, Comedian from Watchmen.
Yeah. The Comedian. Look, a lot of people have said to me that, well, why didn't you give a full chapter to the Comedian because he's such an important character? And that was me avoiding the comparison to the writing abilities of Alan Moore. I think Alan Moore has said everything there needs to be said on the Comedian, and I don't need to challenge that.
Yeah, I think
also,
you're right.
I don't want an angry wizard to hex me.
Yeah, it's probably very good. It's probably a very good choice. Well, Jason, this is dynamite, man.
Thanks,
man.
man.
Thank you for joining Joe and Joe to chit chat about this.
Thanks, man. It's an absolute pleasure talking about Joe with Joe every Joe in time.
Yeah, every time.
Same Joe time, same
Joe time, same
channel.
Joe channel. So listeners, keep on listening. We're going to dig into G.I. Joe Yearbook #3, where Scarlet and Storm Shadow team up silently to break out Snake Eyes from the Cobra Consulate, so stay tuned. And listeners, make sure you go online and follow our friend Jason Inman. He's at Jawin, Jawin. That's his handle. Geek History Lessons, the podcast with Ashley Victoria Robinson. They're great. They're really fun people, guys. They're really great to support. They're one of those budding internet celebrities that have just a really wonderful, wonderful fan base. And they do a lot of really great stuff. While you're online, follow me at Joe on Joe Pod. That is on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com. Just drop me a line just to say, hey, yo, Joe, like your show. Hey, yo, Joe, hate your show. Hey, yo, Joe, I can't wait to hear what you're dropping in July. Oh, my God. Guys, it's a month away, and I'm so excited. But for now, let's dig into G.I. Joe Yearbook number 3. The first story is Hush Job.
Here's Snake Eyes.
Now we start with the beautiful cover by Mike Zeck and John Beatty with Scarlet and Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow in a just a sweet action pose. Snake Eyes is trussed up in the brainwave scanner, and Storm Shadow is defending him as well as Scarlet. They're both in their own inimitable way. Storm Shadow's throwing some Chinese throwing stars, and he's got a sword. Scarlet has her machine gun. And I like this kind of redesign that they give Scarlet on this cover. It's still her colors, but she's got a little bit of CoverGirl in her as far as like the outfit that goes. So she's got like this, well, it's purple, so I don't know if that's like purple leather or whatever, but it's purple and orange, which are her colors, but it's more of a CoverGirl, like give her a jacket and full pants and tactical outfit. I really dig it. I really think it's a good look for her. And Snake Eyes is in that Christ-like pose. So this is it's like Christ and his disciples here in this cover. It's a dynamic cover. It's really great, and I love covers like this where the action is pointing out at you, the reader, because it obviously accomplishes two things. One, it puts you like in the middle of the action. You know, it's that POV shot. And two, it also there's an air of mystery. Who are these guys fighting? Why are they fighting? What's up? Now you may not recognize the brainwave scanner and all that stuff, and even if you did, who's attacking them? Why are they shooting at them? All those things. There's this comic book mystery that takes place in your living room, in your bedroom, wherever it is you're reading this book at the time. All this action is happening in the gutters, term we've used a lot on the show. I haven't touched on that in a little while. It's the gutters of your life. Like, so it's everything around you. Who are these guys? What is going on in this cover? And then obviously to say it's expertly rendered, etc. So really gorgeous cover. And now let's dig in. And today, because it's such a Snake Eyes centric, we are going to use
Snake Eyes
for our page turner. Hush Job. Story by Larry Hama. Pencils by Ron Wagner. Welcome Ron Wagner to the Joe table. Inks by Kim DeMulder. Colors by Max Scheel. Edited by Bob Harris and Jim Shooter, editor-in-chief. I'm a fan of Ron Wagner's work, guys. He worked on a slew of books from the mid-'80s. I mean, he's still working today, but for like a 20-year span, he worked on a whole lot of stuff that was just really, really good, really strong, solid pop culture stuff. Of course, G.I. Joe. He worked again with Larry Hama on Nth Man, the Ultimate Ninja. He did a couple issues of Excalibur. He had a nice run on Punisher. He did a bunch of Ghost Rider stuff. He did a lot of Morbius, the Living Vampire. Over at DC, he did the Book of Fate series. Back over at Marvel, he had a sweet run on Daredevil. I want to say he was one of the guys who put Daredevil back in his yellow costume briefly. He worked on the Hex series. He worked on the Genesis miniseries. There's a lot of like what I would say is like workman-like stuff. He's got a really strong, bold pencil. Like, so it's on the edge of realism, but it's still got a strong foot in like classic Neil Adams style cartooning, where the bodies are very realistically rendered. That's where I'm coming from. It's very much, it's not flashy. It is, I'm going to present to you an entire world, and we're going to get into some of this stuff. I'll point out some of this as we go through. But like, I'm going to present, this is a fully functional world. And in this world, there's depth, there's background, there's details, there's texture to the buildings. There's, like all that stuff. That's what I was think Ron Wagner brings to the table. So I've liked his stuff for quite a while. So I had forgotten that he had penciled this with Larry. There is a little bit of I wonder if Larry, and I don't know if Larry did any layouts for this, because it's obviously a follow up to the Silent stuff. If Larry maybe provided some layouts, because there's a few kind of beats. Obviously, he wrote it, so maybe that was doing layouts. But there's just stuff that's a little bit of a callback and similar to the classic G.I. Joe 21 Silent interlude, and maybe that was Wagner referencing that, because this is obviously the successor to it. Either way, doesn't matter. They've put together just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful story here. So if you remember, at the end of the previous issue, Snake Eyes had been captured, and Scarlet and Storm Shadow, boy, between Scarlet, Storm Shadow, and Snake Eyes, I'm going to be tripping over my S's today. So please bear with me, guys. Scarlet had said she was going to go on a mission to rescue Snake Eyes, and that's kind of where we left it. And Snake Eyes was being taken via helicopter to the brand new Cobra Consulate building in New York, which we get our first really good shot of on this first page, called Hush Job, and a very nice design work on the title, where you've got the helicopter in front of the title Hush Job, giving this really great depth of field and almost 3D effect to it, because the Hush Job itself is sitting behind the building. It just pops right in the corner. You see the building overlaps the dialogue, the title of the story. So there's this really cool, very, very subtle 3D effect going on. I love the Cobra Consulate. They put this building up so fast. And this is not it's not a Terrordrome. They built this building in New York so fast. This weirdo looking Aztec temple. They've even imported smog just to cover it up and make it look spooky. I absolutely love it.
Snake Eyes.
And the Cobra helicopter comes in for a landing on the rooftop of the building, rather. And there was a whole platoon of Cobra soldiers waiting to escort the prisoner. Of course, this is probably like the highest class prisoner they could have. And is it Baroness and Mindbender escorting Snake Eyes? He's trussed up on a log. And they proceed to bring him into the building via the rooftop. Now, silent issues without story, they tend to be very methodical in the storytelling because there's no dialogue, so what you may be able to accomplish previously in just a couple panels, you tend to draw them out in silent issues, because the only thing leading you from one point to the other in the story is the images. They're not able to say, hey, take that guy down, the prisoner Snake Eyes. You have to absolutely nail it in the images and then walk us through it. So it's a little more of a slower paced story, but with high paced action, if that makes sense.
Snake Eyes.
The very next shot is awesome, because we had just seen the Cobra doors slam shut on the rooftop of the building, and they were normally angled doors. They looked like normal. And then the very next shot is of the same doors that just got slammed, except that they're doing a weird fisheye thing. And that immediately puts us off kilter. That puts us in the shoes of someone else. You don't have to go much further than that. The very next panel tells us where it is. It's a camera lens on a, looks like that's a Conquest X30 with Slipstream in it, and Scarlet riding shotgun. And so we immediately see that there's other people observing this. Scarlet, her name is written on the helmet. That's kind of a cheat, but you got to do what you got to do. We see that she zooms in, so she now knows where Snake Eyes is. So we know that she has her target.
Snake Eyes.
Now, somewhere else, and we know it's in the High Sierras, but all you need to know is you're in this cityscape. So if you're a brand new reader and you're not exactly familiar with what's going on, you just know that you're going from this dense cityscape right now onto this. You're in the mountain range, so you're somewhere else. Complete opposite of where you were, and that's all you need to know here. You see a dude with a wolf on a fire chilling, and out of nowhere Scarlet just parachutes right on top of him. That is precision parachuting. And we see that she shows this dude, who we know is Storm Shadow, the picture of Snake Eyes being trussed up that she had just taken on the previous page. She's got a very grim look on her face, and his eyes are equally concerned in that bottom panel. I like very much the shading and the hatching on this page, using that fire as the light source. And even in that top panel, you've got dual light sources because you do have a full moon. So you've got the mountains illuminated by the full moon, and then the fire illuminating the guys even up closer. It's a really intricate page. Actually, the colors on this whole issue are really, really nice.
Snake Eyes.
Now, in this Cobra Consulate, which is just an awesome, awesome series of giant throne rooms. That's what always made me laugh about throne rooms like this. This top Cobra one is like there's all the space and it's very ornate and stuff, but then like where is everything? Like how are you? Have you ever been in like a functional office? Like there's a million file cabinets, there's a million pieces of paperwork, computer terminals, people running around doing stuff. The bad guys' lairs that just have, just giant empty spaces with symbols on the walls, and then that's it. I'm always like, okay, that's great, but what a massive waste of space. Let's get something done here. And we see that Snake Eyes in the bottom panel, being watched by the Baroness, is being probed by Dr. Mindbender. Now, even if you're not sure that the machine is the brainwave scanner, you see the claws on his head, and then again, it's a little bit of a cheat, but it says memory scan operational. And we see some still images from the previous issues, 26, 27, the Snake Eyes flashback stuff. We see Snake Eyes walking with his LRRP squad and getting wounded in Vietnam, and Mindbender operating the controls.
Snake Eyes.
In more memory, Snake Eyes comes home and gets told by Hawk that his family's passed. We see him training as a ninja, and then we see him being recruited by Stalker into the Joe team, all watched over by a very smug Baroness, possibly the most smug we've ever seen her. She looks fantastic. Ron Wagner rendered her wonderfully. Her the outfit curves in all the right places. Like this could be like peak, like attractive Baroness look right now. This is fabulous and powerful too. Like very much someone that's in control of this situation. More so by the stature that they put in here, because again, there's no dialogue, guys. So they choose to put her literally on a pedestal above Mindbender. She's running the operation. She's in charge. There's no dialogue. You see everything by her status and stature and the acting that's being portrayed on this page. It's really, really great.
Snake Eyes.
This is the page that I'm talking about. So this page makes me think that possibly Hama may have done some layouts, and I only say that because this depiction of the subway is very similar to the kind of subway that he depicted in the origin issues. So again, it totally could have just been a reference point. It could have been saying, hey, we're doing this, so here, read these 4 issues and we're hitting these same locations. But this makes me feel like there's just a similar vibe to it, which I love. And let's talk about Ron Wagner's pencils here. The detail and the grit and the hatching and just the level of detail on this page is absolutely fantastic. This is a lived-in, grimed-in subway system. So much graffiti, so much everything. It's great. I really, really like it. Well done. But it's a dude in a trench coat. Seemingly blind man, actually. He's got a cane, and he's like kind of feeling his way through the subway, and there's 3 punks who are going to get him. I like that the one punk who's going to attack this blind dude, he doesn't have an actual knife. He just has an old screwdriver. I'm like, I always thought like screwdrivers are what you use when you're in prison, when you can't get a hold of a real knife. These guys are just punks. Like, I wonder if maybe that was a knife and it got changed at some point because they were like, maybe not a murderous knife. I don't know, but I absolutely think it's hilarious, and I love that it's just a random screwdriver with it looks like a duct tape kind of handle. So it's like a prison fight, yet no one's in prison.
Snake Eyes.
And we immediately see that blind dude ain't who we think he is, and his cane ain't what we think it is. His cane is actually his sword. It's Storm Shadow. And he proceeds to give them all a haircut. I am going to actually, now that I see this image, is there any way, guys, that this dude who gets part of his afro cut off is Big Lob? Because he's got a little bit of Big Lob in him, guys. I'm just going to throw that out there. Look, he's got a little bit of Big Lob. The guy in the middle's got a little bit of a reject Dreadnought. And then the other guy who had the aforementioned screwdriver, he's just like a greaser from Central Casting. So they all get parts of their hair cut off though, which is really great. And as a bald man, I'm jealous. And we see that Storm Shadow leaps off the train at the proper moment to find a Cobra branded manhole cover. It's a secret entrance into the Cobra consulate. Strains of Superman the movie when Otis goes into Luthor's underground lair.
Snake Eyes.
Now, outside of the consulate, we have an elderly woman walking into the front door with a cleaning vacuum kit. She's actually with a couple other of the cleaning crew, so it's not just this old woman coming in alone. There's a blonde woman, and then there's a woman in pink. They've got mops and buckets, so it's the nightly cleaning shift. They're coming in to do their work. Except that as we get a little closer, we see that the old woman, happens to have a Chinese star on her forearm. That's right, it's Scarlet, everybody.
Snake Eyes.
Now in the sewers, Storm Shadow is wading through just muck and gross. And he's not going to get caught unawares because we see that there's and you remember, real quick, New York, sewers, alligators in the sewers, guys. So that's what this page is saying. This page is going oh no, Storm Shadow is going to get caught by the mythical alligators that were living in the New York sewers back in the 80s. He's going to get caught because it looks like alligators coming at him. And he stabs down into the water. And what happens? They aren't alligators. They're Cobra eels, and they are dead, D-E-D, dead. Storm Shadow takes care of business. This page is awesome because it plays with so much without saying anything. Totally alligators. Years later, I'm sure they actually would have used Crocmaster.
Snake Eyes.
Now back to the interrogation. The Snake Eyes interrogation part for us is just a nice little reminder of Snake Eyes' life story. That's what we're seeing. But we're getting to the moments where he's finally able to block out some of what Mindbender's trying to see. So we see it represented here. It says suppressing memory visualization. So Snake Eyes is finally able to fight back, and he's a little worn out. The detail on Mindbender's face is close up on the bottom here. It's awesome. I love it. That alone probably cemented Ron's work because Ron Wagner, of course, would be the regular pencil in G.I. Joe in 10 issues or something like that, and he would do it on and off for the next 20, I think.
Snake Eyes.
And in the Cobra consulate, in the front office, the cleaning lady / Scarlet, she is being scanned by the Cobra soldier at the front desk. He's running an X-ray on her, very much like those body scans that we have at the airport today. So this is kind of where we're at today. And he sees that this old decrepit cleaning lady has all kinds of guns and throwing stars and various weaponry on her, and he calls her out immediately. She gets unmasked, unwigged, really, immediately. And as the Baroness looks into her vacuum cleaner, out comes our boy Timber, looking fantastic. Now, there's one storytelling technique that Larry has always done in a majority of his issues, and he's doing it again here, guys. This is one story, but he's attacking it from 3 different angles. You remember how we've talked about this, where there's three. There's the main plot, the B plot, or the main plot, the B plot, and the C plot, right? So he would go page this adventure, page that adventure, and he wouldn't mix the two very much. And that's what he's doing here. It's the same adventure. Let's get Snake Eyes, but we're checking in on where's Snake Eyes, where's Scarlet, where's Storm Shadow, page. And by the time you're done, each person gets 8 pages to themselves, or in 6 to 8 pages, and you're at the end of the story, and all of a sudden your story has been told. It's really great.
Snake Eyes.
Now Storm Shadow slips in through the sewers, and he's in like a boiler room, basically, and he sees that there's these creatures hanging from the rooftop.
Snake Eyes.
The ceiling, rather. And they are the Red Ninjas. Very reminiscent to how we saw them in the Silent Interlude issue 21. And they all pounce from their sleeping phoenixes, or whatever they're basically their catnap, and they go to town on Storm Shadow. And he is fighting them all off. He's fighting 4 dudes. They're hitting him with nunchucks and staffs and spears and chains. And he's kind of getting it handed to him, to be honest. He does okay, but he doesn't do great. He has to kind of take back, and that's what's cool here is top panel, thick. It's a thick panel. It's got a lot going on, and it's everyone leaping from the ceiling, even Storm Shadow kind of getting ready, and it puts a lot of weight on the bottom of that panel, and it goes boom, and then you go fast, And then you get a pause moment of Storm Shadow backing off. And you show that he's backed off by pulling all the other bad guys out of the image. So now the bad guys, and again, like the cover looking at us, the bad guys are with us. The bad guys are on this side of the table. So Storm Shadow's now backed up. His arms are back straight in like a defensive posture. And behind him is a little bit of a tanker of fuel.
Snake Eyes.
He leaps up on it, slices it through, and the ninjas get covered in oil or fuel, and he uses one of his stars to spark it and light them all on fire. They all die a grisly death. This bit of Storm Shadow sneaking in through the basement, guys, this is just like John Byrne and Claremont did with Wolverine during the Dark Phoenix saga, where Wolverine got dropped into the bottom of the Hellfire Club and he had to fight his way up. Very similar to what's happening here, where he ran into those the faceless Hellfire Club soldiers who later become the Reavers, and fights them and presumably kills him on his way up the building. So I like all this. I don't know if that was exactly in his mind, but this is all very similar, and that's one of the best Wolverine Spotlight issues I've ever read.
Snake Eyes.
So now we see Mindbender is unable to get any more information from Snake Eyes, and all he's seeing is an image of the Hardmaster in a Zen trance. So Snake Eyes has put himself into a Zen trance, and he's blocking the alpha waves. So Mindbender's unable to get any more information. Now, why this also lets him kind of break free of the shackles, I don't know. I like it, though. And maybe it's just that those shackles were just meant to kind of hold you and not necessarily, like, imprison you. So maybe that's what it is. But either way, the important thing about this is, and why this is so crucial to good storytelling, is you're empowering this character, in this case Snake Eyes, you're empowering your rescued character to have some agency and to have the ability to free himself. Maybe not all the way, and maybe even if he had done this on his own, he wouldn't have been able to escape the building. But he is showing, I'm not done, I'm still fighting back, and I can stop you from getting the information you want to get out of my head.
Snake Eyes.
And as Mindbender doesn't know what to do, the alpha wave overload kind of blows the screens up. Now, that's the part that's very comic booky. Like, I feel like it would just, it's a computer, it would just kind of shut down, or like in a reboot or something. But it explodes in his face, leaves him dazed and bloodied. Snake Eyes also dazed, and he gets jumped by all these other soldiers, and they're just wailing on the ninja.
Snake Eyes.
And they're being, because remember, they were in this like little pit thing, and so they're being watched by these other two guards at the door, so I'm sure their attention is absolutely on Snake Eyes getting pummeled, so they don't see when the door opens. Here comes Storm Shadow, and he's got sword play everywhere, and he tosses his sword brother a sword. Snake Eyes catches it in midair, and Snake Eyes proceeds to use it to cut them fools up. I'm adding to the Snake Eyes kill count here, everybody. We have 4 people in this panel. Snake Eyes goes through all. I'm going to give him all 4. There were more in the previous one. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, there were 9 in the previous one. I'm not going to give him 9 kills. I am going to give him 4 kills. So, Snake Eyes kill count, everybody. Let's count it off. We are at 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. We're going to add 27. We're going to have 4 more. And we are at 31 kills, everybody. Snake Eyes kill count, as of G.I. Joe Yearbook number 3, 31 kills. Mark it down.
Snake Eyes.
On the outside of the building, there's the fire, which the fire started from Storm Shadow, blowing up the boiler room. You've got a bunch of soldiers, and it's those red ninjas. They're making, so maybe they didn't all actually die in the basement, which I figured they would have. They're climbing their way up the consulate building and into this giant, just torture chamber, whatever you want to call it, the throne room, whatever it is. It's great though. It's 3 really tall, really gorgeous panels. Them climbing, them breaking through this cobalt stained glass window, and then they square off against Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes, who are now back to back, on the precipice that formerly the Baroness was standing on, overlooking the machine that's the brainwave scanner. But now the brainwave scanner is also on fire because of Snake Eyes' explosive Zen mastery. You know what I'm saying? So what it does is it puts them over a pit of fire fighting their way out of hell. That is exactly what you end up with here. It's so great.
Snake Eyes.
And while they're going to town, they realize, you know what, sometimes it's okay to just run away. So they actually leap over the red ninjas. Storm Shadow plants some C4, I don't know, or actually, I'm sorry, I think that's a Claymore mine, front towards enemy. And they rig it to blow, and Snake Eyes just pulls the det cord.
Snake Eyes.
The building explodes. The top of the Cobra Consulate absolutely just explodes over New York City. And what's great in this shot is you see some of it's totally dark night, and you see some of the New York skyline in the background, again, to remind you where this is taking place. Awesome visual. Absolutely great visual. We see that Mindbender has survived. He's heading into like an escape hatch, and Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes have made their way to the front, like the front doors at the base of the building. Now, before we go further, what's fantastic about this? Snake Eyes is not just a ninja, and neither is Storm Shadow, frankly. Snake Eyes is a commando. They're soldiers. They're both soldiers. So you have the opportunity to tell it's not just a fight about soldiers and about ninjas and swordplay and ancient martial arts. They're they're commandos. They've got explosives. Storm Shadow brought some explosives, and we're gonna blow this place up too. It's great, and I love when they don't forget that, when they remember that they're also commandos.
Snake Eyes.
But when they get to the front door, they are flanked by a lot of Cobra soldiers. Like it's going to be hard to get out of here, is what I'm saying. The Baroness comes out of hiding. She puts guns to their head. She marches them out into the street. They're being held captive. And what's funny is that the Baroness is marching them out. Like, they're in their own consulate. You'd think she would march them back in. Now, maybe it's because of fire, but the Cobra soldiers are like, all right, we trust the Baroness. We know what she's doing.
Snake Eyes.
And we quickly learn that there's the Baroness in her brown panties, trussed up with a bunch of Cobra soldiers, and she was taken place by Scarlet. And we get the end. Scarlet and Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow and Timber are happily making their way through the New York streets while the Cobra Consulate burns to the ground. And they've successfully rescued Snake Eyes. I love this story. It's so good. And it's very simple. Remember, we talked about it up front. It's a really simple story, but it's so well told and it's so well acted. And you see a lot of emotion, and not just in the facial expressions. You see it in the body postures. You see it in the staging of the panels to express, dominance and power and submission, and how the tides are turning and all that stuff. Everything about this is fantastic. Ron Wagner, welcome aboard. G.I. Joe Yearbook number 3. I am gonna come back with a little quick follow-up on the little short 8-pager, My Dinner with Serpentor. So we'll be right back.
Hey, listeners, thank you for your continued support of the Joe on Joe podcast. We completed all the main episodes of the original cartoons, and now we're looking ahead to new ways to discuss the toy we all love, G.I. Joe. Be sure to go to patreon.com/JoeOnJoePod to see how you can help support the future of the Joe on Joe podcast. We're going to be doing some more comic book reviews, one-on-one all-star interviews, and some very exciting special episodes to be revealed. Your support makes all of that possible. So please visit patreon.com/JoeOnJoePod and help make it happen. Now back to the show.
And now let's dig into a fun, quick little 8-page story. I love it. It's called My Dinner with Serpentor, written by Larry Hama. Mike Zeck in one of the rare interior art appearances, and Dennis Janke is on the artwork. Janet Jackson, is doing the colors, and Ken Lopez is doing the lettering. This is a fun little historical vignette look into the lives of specifically Serpentor, but also Cobra High Command. What is Cobra High Command up to these days? I think this is hilarious. I absolutely remember reading this as a kid. I wasn't familiar with My Dinner with Andre at the time, so now with a little years on me, I recognize that what they're doing here, and it's absolutely fabulous. But it opens with the Dreadnoks, and for those of you Joe and Joe listeners, keep paying attention to the Dreadnoks. Torch, Ripper, and Buzzer, and they're serving chocolate-covered donuts and grape soda to Dr. Mindbender and Serpentor as a quote-unquote feast. And Mindbender is very nonplussed. He's very, very unhappy. And the main course are yummy frozen pizzas served up by Buzzer. And as Dr. Mindbender calls it, it's a gastronomic outrage. There's a lot to like on this page. Really great acting on the page. You see Ripper trying to act a little too hoity-toity. He's like his back's too straight. Torch with the napkin over his arm, serving like in a fine restaurant. The look of astonishment on Mindbender's face. And then the reveal as Buzzer drops these pizzas off, like it's like he's like it's great character acting. And there's the ever so subtle smile on Serpentor's face too, because remember this whole time where they put the camera, we're just seeing Mindbender's reaction of disgust. Mindbender continues to yell at them, and he says, pizzas are, and he's about to, make fun of pizzas, which I got to say, as a kid, I love this because, as an adult, I love pizza. It's the greatest meal ever. And as a kid, I was like, this whole story, this makes sense. But we see that Serpentor is like, no, not inappropriate at all. And let me tell you a story why. And he tells a story of the Roman siege of Alesia. Takes place during the Gallic campaigns in the year 52 BC. And we see a flashback to some of the DNA memories that Serpentor has. And in this case, this whole story basically gets to the invention of pizza. And we see that Serpentor's legions are laying siege to a city, but they're going to be there for a while. And the heart of morale lies in the stomachs of the legionary. And you see that the Legion soldiers, are upset because they have oatmeal and salt pork, and they just don't have anything good to eat. And so one inventive soldier takes a piece of pita bread, puts a little bit of oil from crushed olives, some cheese, sliced olives and meat scraps, and then toasts that pita over the open fire. Makes a little, could it be the first pizzone, perhaps? Maybe he's made the first pizzone. So the Serpentor ancestor says basically, hey, tell all the soldiers this is what we're going to eat now. And so then that gives them the energy to strike back and defeat the chief of the Gauls. And he was stymied of how did these legions get so much energy? And I'll tell you why. Because according to Dr. Mindbender, the invention of the pizza led to the downfall of the Vercingetorix, can't even pronounce that, and to the domination of what is now France and Belgium. And Serpentor's like, nah, of course that was just a random memory. Or was it? Aren't there all imaginary stories? Wink, wink, Superman, wink, wink. And you add just this great little picture shot of Serpentor's DNA buddy. Did they actually name him? Did they say who he is? Let's look back a little bit. Interesting. Yeah, they actually didn't say exactly who he was. They just referred to him as, and I'm assuming he was the general here, as proprietor. But since they actually technically didn't say it, maybe Serpentor was the guy who made the pizza. Although I think they're heavily hinting that he's the other guy. But look at this last panel. The guy who made the pizza, he has that weird Ewok-looking hat. He's in the picture too. I'm going to throw this out there. I'm going to say Serpentor invented pizza. And I'm not even joking. They don't exactly say that Serpentor was any one of these dudes at all whatsoever. I say Serpentor invented pizza. And then the rest of the yearbook is just littered with beautiful pinups. Lady J, Mindbender, Serpentor, Xandar and Zorana, Hawk, Dreadnoks. All these are Mike Zeck, gorgeous pieces. So that's it for the G.I. Joe yearbook number 3, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all so much. And remember, get out there. Go on Amazon today. You're hearing this. This just dropped. You can go on Amazon today and pre-order Jason Inman's book, Super Soldiers. It is coming out on the 18th, and I'm telling you, you're going to love it. You will not be disappointed. It is fantastic. Thanks again, guys. And now you, Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.